Exactly 1 year ago, Canada confirmed its first case of the coronavirus. Today, questions about how the country has handled the pandemic and if more could have been done. This as more changes to the vaccine rollout are announced today. Experts are calling it a mental health crisis. Local leaders say demand for service is growing as the pandemic continues to take a toll. A live look at our city there. It's looking more like winter this week with more snowfall on the way. Colette Kennedy will bring us the full forecast later in the program. I'm Katerina Georgieva. Chris is away. Delays of the Pfizer vaccine are causing the province to change up its vaccine rollout plans. Today, the Ford government announced that all available doses will be diverted to residents in long-term care and retirement homes. That means shots meant for healthcare workers and essential caregivers are being delayed. Jacob Barker has been looking into this and he joins me now live. Jacob, tell us more about what this means locally.
Well, Kat, for people expecting to get their doses of the vaccine through the hospital, they won't be getting them for the time being. And that goes for both first and second doses. Today, Windsor Regional Hospital released a statement saying, "We wanted to try to ensure everyone who had received the first dose would receive a second dose. Unfortunately, due to further and more severe Pfizer vaccine supply issues, we have now been forced to stop all first doses and delay second doses in accordance with the Government of Ontario directions following the recommendations of the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. In those recommendations, it does allow for people who have gotten a first dose to be put on a 42-day window instead of a 28-day window, as well as its own workers. Hospitals also vaccinate essential caregivers, long-term care and retirement home staff, congregate care staff, and higher-risk Indigenous populations. The hospital says it has vaccinated just over 7,000 people, with more than 2,100 of them with second doses. That leaves nearly 5,000 people waiting now for this second dose.
So, Jacob, any further shots for all of those workers in phase one, they're now being put on hold. So talk us through the rollout in long-term care and retirement homes.
Well, Kat, nobody with the health unit was available to talk after the announcement this afternoon. But what we do know is that last week, the health unit had completed giving out first doses in both long-term care and retirement facilities in the region that were eligible and had held back enough to ensure second doses could happen. And these were going to residents, staff, and essential caregivers. But there are people who were unable to get their first doses for a variety of reasons and are still waiting to get them. Up until now, the health unit has only used Moderna vaccine and the hospital has only used the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. Pfizer's vaccine had to be kept much colder temperatures in transport and Moderna, making it challenging to get them into homes. Since then, the province says that they have worked with Pfizer to be able to get the vaccine into the homes without having any doses become unusable.
Ontario was very conservative with following the Pfizer recommendations to the letter and keeping the Pfizer vaccine in a -70 containment space, which made transport to long-term care very difficult. Since then, however, we've seen excellent evidence that it can be transported and that even one dose can be protective. So it seems that the evidence is allowing us to get the first shots into the arms of people sooner and that the Pfizer vaccine can go to long-term care.
Although there are a lot of the vaccines here are on hold in Windsor, Essex, good news for Chatham-Kent and Sarnia-Lambton. Both got their first shipments of the Moderna vaccine. Chatham-Kent already begun giving out shots this afternoon, and first doses will start in Sarnia-Lambton tomorrow. Kat?
Thanks, Jacob. The CBC's Jacob Barker reporting live. A province-wide enforcement blitz has resulted in tickets for about 1 in 5 businesses here in Windsor over the weekend. Over the weekend, inspectors went into grocery chains and big box stores to check in on measures around masking, physical distancing, and capacity. 97 businesses were visited by inspectors. 21 tickets and 26 orders were issued. The province isn't naming the businesses involved. The health unit says their officers also helped with the blitz, charging one store and giving written notices to another 12 businesses. But it's not clear if those infractions were included in the overall numbers from the province. Now, in addition to that, the city of Windsor did its own separate monitoring of other areas, leading to 6 charges and 2 warnings. Meanwhile, it's another day of double-digit COVID-19 cases in Windsor, Essex. 68 new infections and 1 more person has died. The number of active cases has dropped to 1,500. That's about 1,000 less than the same time last week. And it's the lowest that we've seen since around Christmas time. The health unit says the lower caseload is making it easier to do contact tracing.
Our numbers have come down recently, but we're also we're seeing less cases. So that would make sense that the active cases are coming down. We're addressing all of the people. We do have good resources, I feel, to continue to address the new cases that we receive.
Today marks exactly 1 year since the first case of the virus that caused COVID-19 was confirmed in Canada, and it happened in Toronto. A traveler who'd returned from China then began showing symptoms after landing at Pearson Airport. Our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley looks at what's changed during this year of COVID and what hasn't.
The case is in a male who's in his 50s. He had traveled to Wuhan, China.
In those early weeks of 2020, when the novel coronavirus was first being imported to Canada, officials tried to calm fears.
That is the primary message that I want to give Canadians. The risk of contracting coronavirus is low.
As the weeks passed, the cases came from more and more countries, and by late February, COVID-19 was spreading in the U.S.
Probably at that point was the turning point to say, okay, there's a risk here to us. We need to start, invoking public health measures.
That didn't happen until mid-March. Ontario declared a state of emergency and imposed a lockdown. The federal government halted non-essential travel across the border, but did not halt international flights. Health officials emphasized screening people for symptoms.
Don't use a mask in public if you're not feeling symptoms or if you've not been asked to wear a mask.
Had we known clearly that there was pre-symptomatic transmission, I think the way we would have handled things would have been much different.
Although hospitals braced for an onslaught of patients, the real carnage came in long-term care homes.
What's more tragic is how it's unfolding in the second wave now, because there certainly could be steps taken between wave 1 and wave 2 to significantly protect the most vulnerable population among us. And, it's awful. It's absolutely awful to watch.
More than 3,300 residents of long-term care have died of COVID-19 in this province, and roughly 40% of homes are battling outbreaks right now.
That we're this far along the pandemic and we're still seeing the outbreaks and deaths from long-term care homes is a complete, it's almost embarrassing.
The 1-year anniversary comes amid some signs that Ontario's second wave of COVID-19 may be receding. Still, the second wave is not over. It has already brought more deaths than the first, and more contagious variants of COVID-19 have now spread to Ontario.
Close down our borders and make sure anyone that's coming in gets tested. Mandatory testing.
In the year since that first positive test, Ontario has reported more than 250,000 cases of COVID-19 and nearly 6,000 people have died, making this an anniversary with no cause for celebration. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Experts say we're in a mental health crisis, and a spike in drug overdoses in our region has officials on alert. Health officials say between January 18th and January 20th, there were 9 emergency department visits related to fentanyl. And in that same time frame, there were 6 opioid overdoses involving fentanyl and 1 involving methamphetamine. For more, I spoke with the head of the local branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association. She says this is reflective of the toll this pandemic is taking on the community, and that addiction is just one of the issues they've been seeing a spike in.
I think sadly, this is something that we have been seeing throughout the pandemic. And I think it is a sign that people are struggling with the impacts likely of isolation, of relationship breakdown, of challenges and pressures that may be income. So many have been impacted by the economic pressures that the pandemic has brought, and so I think people are looking elsewhere for some comfort.
I also want to ask you, in addition to an increase in addictions, I understand that you're also seeing an increase in suicides or suicide attempts. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's hard to really gather all of the information in terms of numbers. The data always kind of lags behind, what may be actually happening out on the front lines. But I know just through some of my own staff contacts that they were aware of 4 suicides alone last week. So what we are seeing in our clients, and we do a suicide risk assessment on anyone that comes to see us, but we're seeing about a 25% increase in individuals who have, maybe contemplated suicide, some who may actually have gone so far as to think about how they might, take their life. And it's just such a sad situation that people have, lost their sense of hope, I think, and again, feeling that this is the only choice that's left. And so we really want to step up our game and make sure that we, along with many of my other mental health and addiction providers in the community, because it really, each of us plays a slightly different role in terms of what programs and services we can provide. But, we really want to be there for our community.
The association says that if you're struggling, it's important to share your feelings with someone you trust and reach out for help. And a reminder that many are struggling right now, and if you're feeling this way, you're not alone. The association has also just launched a new fundraiser to try and raise $1 million. And the goal is to help increase services and get more boots on the ground to respond to the demand. Canadians have been watching closely to find out more about Joe Biden's trade plans. The U.S. president offered some insight into this when he signed a Buy American executive order. The order says they'll be measuring domestic content requirements. Currently, at least 50% of the components for American vehicles have to be made in America.
But because of loopholes that have been expanded over time, you can count the least valuable possible parts as part of that 50% to say made in America, while the most valuable parts, the engines, the steel, the glass, are manufactured abroad. So basically, we're batting 0 for 2. The content threshold of 50% aren't high enough. And the way we measure the content doesn't account for U.S. jobs and economic activity. We're going to change that as well. The executive action I'm signing today will not only require that companies make more of their components in America, but that the value of those components is contributing to our economy, measured by things like a number of American jobs created and or supported.
There's a new marketing tool aimed to help struggling businesses stay open because of the lockdown measures.
Because of the pandemic and because of the lockdown condition, this particular sector has taken a huge hit. It was one of the first sectors that was shut down and has got a very limited opportunity to carry out business.
The new initiative is called Dine #YQG. It includes free postings of restaurant menus, contests, giveaways, and other incentives to get people to order from local restaurants. How does a dinner and a live show sound? It's something many of us haven't been able to enjoy since before the pandemic. But now, on Sundays, a local restaurant delivers a hot meal to customers along with a local musician. It's a new initiative, but the owner hopes to keep the gravy train running for many years to come. The CBC's Tamina Aziz reports.
Our hearts are free. Order some poutine from Fog Lounge, and you can also request a little music. These musicians say they've missed performing live. The lockdown forced the duo to perform online instead. But on Sunday, they, along with a handful of other musicians, drove around the city performing for small groups outside of people's homes.
Sitting around at home throughout the pandemic and not being able to play music with our friends or with each other for months now has been pretty tough.
Well, it's definitely different because, people are separated, there's smaller audiences, and kind of to get the crowd that we previously had, it requires us to go to a bunch of different locations, whereas before everyone was in the same spot at the same time. But I think this allows it to be a little bit more intimate and make a deeper connection or a closer connection with the people that you're playing for.
Yeah, I think people are more appreciative of it for sure.
People like Debbie Hazlitt. She says the experience has been wonderful, and she's glad to be supporting local businesses and talent.
We miss the live music, and I love going out to the pub and seeing the bands and just sitting having a drink. And now I get to do it on my front porch with poutine and wine and some wonderful neighbors that came out to see the music as well.
Fog Lounge owner Tom Looser says he came up with the idea when he realized his business needed to survive another lockdown, but that it wasn't quite the same without music. The initiative started 6 weeks ago, benefits both Fog and local musicians. He says it's been such a success that his restaurant now runs about 50 shows every Sunday. He plans on keeping it going post-pandemic.
For an artist to not be able to perform is really devastating, actually, which we learned in the beginning in March. And now we're learning that it's really a buoying experience to have them be able to play. So it's not just like dollar signs for us. It's like this is a real way to contribute and support artists on a massive scale.
Despite the snow and cold weather, the musicians say it felt good to perform live again. They hope to keep singing for other people's suppers as long as they can. Tamina Aziz, CBC News, Windsor.
What a cool thing to have live music popping up in neighborhoods throughout our city. That's awesome. Another live look, well, not at our city, but you can see Detroit there, and we might be getting more snow tomorrow. So Colette Kennedy is going to join us right after the break and tell us what we can expect. Police in LaSalle are warning residents to stay off the ice in the area. 4 teens were trying to play hockey on a pond yesterday when the ice suddenly collapsed beneath them, sending one under the water.
You're just getting ready to go out and have a little bit of fun, and you don't expect the ice to give way underneath you. I can speak from experience. I've been in myself, and it takes your breath away. It instantaneously takes your breath away, and it is very, very terrifying. But the key is keep your wits about you, and get out of the ice as quick as possible and get help as quick as you can.
Caution tape and a sign warning people to stay off the ice have been set up around the pond. Police say a parent on shore called 911. The teen who was submerged was taken to hospital, and the other 3 were assessed by paramedics for injuries and hypothermia. Police say that it hasn't been cold enough or for long enough for the ice to be safe. Colette Kennedy joins us now. Colette, that's a scary story, and I'm glad everybody, was okay, but it does sort of speak to the fickle nature of the weather lately. It was snowing over the weekend. What can we expect?
Yeah, it's exactly that temperature going up and down. It doesn't give the ice a chance to freeze. Not only that, I do want to caution folks, we're getting a dusting of snow coming in through Tuesday, so that over top of ice really doesn't allow you to assess it very well, so you're going to need to be even more careful. Our temperature at the moment is just below the freezing mark at -1, but the winds make it feel like -7, and then we have this system that's going to be moving in. So our winds are going to be picking up from the northeast and getting quite gusty as we head through the day on Tuesday, so we're going to add snow to that, and that being put together means it's going to be blowing around and reducing visibility, also with some wet roadways. It's not going to be pleasant to be out on the roads period tomorrow as this moves through. For now, we're just looking at some of that cloud cover that's coming in. The broader perspective, this system here, remember we talked about that last week, the one that would track south of us? It did, it is, but this is another one that is coming in. So this is where we start to see it in the overnight hours beginning to develop. A little bit of freezing drizzle could be mixed in with there at first, and then it becomes more of this wet snow that we'll have moving through. It should pack pretty well, kids, by the way. As this moves in, it carries on, gets a little heavier towards the late morning, mid part of the day, and then eventually tomorrow evening we'll just be looking at some lake effect, and things will really be tapering off as the day wears on, and we'll start to not only dry out but start to clear out as well. So that's a nice setup for Wednesday, that there'll be some sunshine in there. The snow likely kind of sticking around for a bit, but you can see we're into this lighter blue, 2 to 5 centimeters. I think we'll be closer to 5 because we're very close to that area where it's going to be enhanced with 5 to 10 centimeters. For tonight, temperature doesn't change much, nearly steady as the system is moving in. Tomorrow, just above the freezing mark, 1 degree as that snow comes down. And then look at the colder air and temperatures. We have daytime highs, overnight lows. That's why I say anything we get, Katarina's going to be sticking around.
Right, so it'll look like a white winter for a little bit longer.
It's going to seem like a real January for a change.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, when we come back, we'll tell you about a couple that's facing a potential fine for allegedly skirting the rules in an effort to get a COVID-19 vaccine. Stay with us. Welcome back. Controversial Canadian Senator Lynn Beyak is stepping down 3 years before the mandatory retirement age. Beyak has faced criticism for her comments about Indigenous people and residential schools. In 2017, she said that while mistakes were made, the schools were, quote, well-intentioned. Thousands of students at the schools died of disease and malnutrition. Beyak was kicked out of the Conservative caucus in 2018, and she was suspended from the Senate twice. A motion was filed last month that could have led to her expulsion. Beyak says she is leaving now because she has been a sitting senator for 8 years. That is the limit that would have been imposed on senators under former Prime Minister Stephen Harper's plan to have an elected Senate. The plan never went into effect. A married couple is accused of breaking Yukon coronavirus rules and chartering a plane to a small community to receive a dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. Rodney Baker is the former president and CEO of a Canadian casino company. He and his wife, Ekaterina Baker, an aspiring actress, both received tickets at the White Horse Airport. The couple arrived there last week, and instead of self-isolating for 14 days, they chartered a flight to Beaver Creek. That's a community of about 100 people near the Alaska border. There, they allegedly took advantage of a mobile clinic that was giving out doses of the Moderna vaccine. The couple claimed they were new employees at a nearby motel. The CBC has reached out to the Bakers for comment, but has not heard back. Snow on the ground can be a common sight in Canada, but not everywhere. You are looking at London, England. People there got to enjoy a rare snowfall yesterday. They've been under their third pandemic lockdown since early January, so this brought some much needed outdoor fun for adults, for children, and even dogs. Sadly, for those enjoying this winter wonderland, the snow didn't stick around for too long. By mid-afternoon, most of it was gone. I love seeing that, people playing in the snow. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can find us on social media as well. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Rick Mercer Report is up next. Have a great night.